Alright, YouTube, so just in advance I'm keeping my voice down just because I live in a house with other people, so I gotta respect that. But I got a tip from a viewer here, and this is an article I haven't read before, but this was posted in response to a video that I did regarding Jordan Peterson and his connection to Agenda 21. So this is from redice.tv, and it's titled Jordan Peterson, a UN Globalist, and edited a report for the high-level panel on sustainable development. And the source is voxday.blogspot.ca, so this is a repost, but it's on Redice, so we at least have an available article. Anyways, reading. Poll is on to the Jordanics fraud. Update. The 8chan thread already got nuked, so it has been reposted at 4chan, and also has been archived. Jordan B. Peterson worked on the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on sustainable development, editing a document that was released in 2013 entitled A New Global Partnership, Eradicate Poverty and Transform Economies Through Sustainable Development. One of the panel members of this UN High Council was none other than Skippy himself, John Podesta. In July 2012, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon announced that 27 members of a high-level panel to advise on the Global Development Framework beyond 2015. The target date for the Millennium Development Goals, and that's an acronym, MDGs. Okay, so it says here, the panel was part of the Secretary General's post-2015 initiative mandated by the 2010 MDG Summit. UN member states have called for open, inclusive consultations involving civil society, the private sector, academia, and research institutions from all regions, in addition to the UN system, to advance the development framework beyond 2015. There is a global ethic for a globalized world based on our common humanity, the Rio principles, and the shared ethos of all traditions. Do as you would be done by. Look at what it says on page 18 under the heading Global Impact by 2030. International migration, the universal human rights and fundamental freedoms of migrants must be respected. These migrants make a positive economic contribution to their host countries by building up their labor force. And it says here, from the acknowledgments section of the report, the deliberations of the panel were informed by the broad consultative process conducted by the United Nations, and it says here, as directed by the Secretary General in our terms of reference. This includes national and global thematic consultations under the aegis of the United Nations Development Group, and that's an acronym. It says UNDG. Regional consultations undertaken by the regional commissions, consultations with businesses around the world under the guidance of the UN Global Impact, and views of the scientific and academic community as conveyed through the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. We are grateful for the perspective these extensive consultations provided. Some initially doubted that Peterson was actually involved with this UN agenda, since he is not listed among the 27 members of the panel. However, in an interview with the Dark Room podcast in October 2016, Peterson openly declared that he was not merely involved with the UN HLP report, but he actually wrote the underlying narrative for it. It says here, and I guess this is a quote from Jordan Peterson. It says, excuse me, I just gotta clear my throat. This is a pretty interesting article so far. My apologies. Okay, so I'm a media whore, you know. I'm a professor at the University of Toronto so far. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have a clinical practice. I'm a business consultant. I do executive coaching, mostly for senior partners of big law firms. I run a testing business for the world's biggest early-stage technology incubator in California called the Founder Institute. They've started 2,000 businesses in the past 5 years, and I've screened all 30,000 of their entrants, because I know how to predict entrepreneurial ability. I designed a program called Future Authoring that has helped more than 7,000 university students improve their grades by 25% and decrease their dropout by the same amount. By about the same amount, rather. I worked on the UN Secretary General's High Panel for Sustainability report that was delivered, I believe, in 2013, and rewrote the underlying narrative to strip out most of the ideological claptrap. Okay, it says his involvement with the UN was also confirmed in his bio at Moses Zenamer conference. So Moses Zenamer's conference, Idea City. And then, quote, Dr. Jordan Peterson has been a dishwasher, gas jockey, bartender. Gas jockey, I think that means like a gas attendant. It's a Canadian phrase, I believe. Anyways, dishwasher, gas jockey, bartender, beekeeper, and railway line worker. He's taught mythology to lawyers, doctors, and businessmen. Consulted for the UN Secretary General's High-Level Panel on Sustainable Development, otherwise known as Agenda 21. It says here, helped his clinical clients manage depression, OCD, anxiety, and schizophrenia, and lectured extensively internationally. Dr. Jordan Peterson has published more than 100 scientific papers and revolutionized the psychology of religion with his book, Maps of Meaning, The Architecture of Belief. As a Harvard professor, he was nominated for the prestigious Levinson Teaching Prize. His YouTube channel's videos have over 8 million views, and his lectures on mythology were turned into a popular 13-part series on TVO. Dr. Peterson's online self-help program, the Self-Authoring Suite, has been featured in Oprah Magazine, CBC Radio, and NPR, and has helped over 100,000 people resolve the problems of their past and radically improve their future, end quote. I can't say I'm even a little bit surprised to learn that Peterson is a NWO. So New World Order, given that he is one of his most stated motives is to dissuade young men from opposing the neoliberal world order. But Peterson's involvement in the writing that particular document is interesting in light of how the Maps of Meaning he explicitly observes the immigrating foreigners have been considered a source of chaos dating back to the classical era. That would put the imperative for the hero to slay the dragon of chaos into a new perspective, would it not? In other words, there is now a very good reason to believe that Peterson actually knows the extent of the philosophical evil he's advocating. He is not some naive, or he is not some sort of naive, accidental Pied Piper. A few more paragraphs here. It is clear that Peterson is not, and never has been, what he presents himself as being. Once I finished the chapter of his Maps of Meaning, a thought struck me, which I will later explicate, as it is relevant to demonstrating what an intellectual fraud he is, and how wholly ignorant of the Western canon. And I predicted to a companion that there would be less than 5 references to Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, and Augustine in the entire 714-page book. Oh, it's almost done. Alright, so it says, then I did a search. There were 2 references to Aristotle. 2. That was all. My companion was duly impressed, especially when I contrasted that lack of references with the vast number of references to Jung, Freud, and Plato. Now, here's the punchline. Both references to Aristotle were contained in a single quotation by the, quote, the eminent theologist Reinhold Niebuhr, end quote. Peterson never once refers to Aristotle himself or any of the great philosophers' many works. I had been wondering how Peterson could produce some of the stupid and obviously false statements that he had made about history, such as medieval people not being familiar with rhetoric, or the ancients not knowing how to think empirically. Wow. Okay, so it says, but apparently he really is that ignorant because he's never actually read most of his classics, or most of the classics. He has only read about them, third or even fourth hand. It says, forget his being buddy-buddy with Ben Shapiro. That's bad enough, but this guy deplatformed faith associations, and he's connected to John freaking Podesta. Wow, that is something else, because that article that I read before was very stripped down. It actually conveniently didn't have any of that stuff about John Podesta or um, Jordan Peterson being ignorant of Aristotle. I mean, to be honest, I'm completely ignorant of Aristotle and all philosophy in general. Uh, but yeah, I would go ahead and assess that Jordan Peterson is a total fraud. You know, he's not. You know, his association with Ben Shapiro. It's pretty much like, oh hey, like I'm with Ben Shapiro though, so I'm associated with a conservative guy. Like, you guys can trust me. Like, just like there's just so much weird shit about Jordan Peterson, and just my gut feeling. I'm like, I don't doubt at all like that he's involved with John Podesta and all, you know, Tom Steyer and all them. You know, there's so many of these people that are just running around on TV, and they just all happen to be on TV. That's kind of the crazy thing. They're all kind of out in the open, you know, wolf in sheep's clothing. That's kind of what Jordan Peterson is, in my opinion. You know, he's a total wolf in sheep's clothing, because here he's trying to come out. He's like trying to inspire people. That was my initial impression of him. I thought he was like some revolutionary psychologist that was kind of like reinvigorating men, but I would go ahead and say that he's probably misleading people, you know. And just he even said it himself. He's a media whore. He is kind of a media whore. Think about it. Think about all the shit that he's interjected himself into. Like, he came out during the Kavanaugh hearing and said Kavanaugh should step down because of the accusations. I mean, this was the same guy, and Salty Cracker pointed this out. He said, this is the same guy who said never apologize to a mob or never back down to a mob. So it's just so, it's hypocritical. It's whatever, you know. My gut feeling is he's not a good guy. So that's about all. All right, well, that was a pretty good take. I'm going to end it on that. Let's see, I'm just going to look at this article. So yeah, you can find this, just type in the article if you want to look at it. It's titled Jordan Peterson, a UN globalist, edited a report for the high-level panel on sustainable development. Wow. All right, guys. God bless. Jesus loves you, and I'll see you later. Peace out.